Seems like I've riled up a lot of TW200 owners, and in today's video I'm going to give you a little bit more of a perspective of what it's like to own this machine after about 4 months or so and putting some good miles on it and finally using it a little bit off-road. And by off-road I mean in the backyard with 3 or 4 inches of snow on the ground. This right here is a older 1992 TW200. In the previous video I talked about 5 things I hate about it, and many people were upset with me because I had things to dislike. The truth is, just because I have 5 things I dislike about it doesn't mean I don't have 10 things that I like about it, and I feel like that's a concept most people fail to grasp. With that being said, no bike is perfect. Literally every single bike has some type of fault, and whether it's a fault that you can live with or a fault you actually like or whatever it is comes down to each individual person, and that's the same with the TW200. Just because it doesn't do good in one aspect doesn't mean it doesn't do phenomenal in another, but this actually kind of fails to do good in anything in particular. And that seems like a complaint, but it's actually not with this bike right here. This bike isn't made to do one thing in particular. It's actually made to do a little bit of everything at the same time, well, but not great. And that's what makes this bike so great. But that also gives me reasons to complain about it, which some people disagreed with, which I can understand. And if you haven't watched the previous video, the things I had to complain about this motorcycle was the fact that it's slow. It doesn't really serve the purposes of the road all too well. Some of the later bikes now probably do a little bit more towards 60, but at the end of the day, that's still not highway capable, and it's barely keeping up with back roads. Especially if you live somewhere like we do up here in Wisconsin, our county roads and our fun roads, you can say, are pretty much straight. But this right here isn't really a street bike. And I complain about it because it is street legal and it's made to some element be streetable, and people do street them, but it's not really made for that whatsoever. The reality of owning this bike right here is it's going to be slow. It's going to top out at 55 miles per hour, and you can't really carry a passenger, but what you can do is go off-road. This bike, in all reality, is number one, a beginner's bike. If you're looking to get on the road with the TW200, you can still have fun as someone who has experience. I still have fun taking this bike out on the roads. With those things in mind, it is a fun bike to use on the road, just putting around. But to actually use on a daily consistent basis, which is not why I bought the bike, but for those who are considering buying this as your one and only motorcycle to use as transportation, yes, you can, but I do not recommend it if you're primarily using this for street riding. There are much better options out there, even as beginner bikes, if you did want that half and half enduro and street mix. I guess I didn't have to say for street use, enduro means on and off road. But for the point being, there are better options for the price point. These bikes hold an insane amount of value, and a used example like this still costs around its MSRP new. And the reason for that is there's a huge community with these things. People like to use them off-road. People like to use them as utilitarian type motorcycles rather than the street bikes that, well, I kind of expected it to be a little bit better in the aspect for. And the reason why I'm making this video is, if you're expecting to use this as a street bike, you can. Are you going to get bored of it? Absolutely. Are you going to probably not like it if you're using it primarily for that aspect? Yes. If you're familiar with the car world, or perhaps the truck world, I should say, this is more similar to a Jeep than anything else, really. This is like the Jeep of motorcycles. It's really good off-road. It's made for being off-road and being on trails and crawling over stuff, but it's also street legal, so you can take it on the road even though it's not made for that. The one thing that I think differs these things from Jeeps is the fact that most of these are probably used off-road, and anytime I see them, people are taking them off-road, while Jeeps are used on the street surface. If you're looking for a street bike, I highly recommend you go something towards like a KLX 250 or a CRF 250 rather than a TW200. Those bikes will be a little bit better on the road, and they do cost a about the same, which is kind of funny. I've been bouncing around the idea of getting a bike like this, so I wanted to take some time and actually learn a little bit about it, ride it a little bit, and rip it through some snow, which was a lot of fun. As soon as I got this bike onto the snow, I totally understood what the purpose of it was. It really strives on trails, off-road, dirt, mud, and people do take these bikes to Moab, and I doubt they're doing heavy rock crawling like Jeeps, but there's a lot of trails out there, and I can definitely understand how this bike becomes from like a 3 out of 10 on the fun and practicality scale to like a 10 of 10 on the fun and practicality scale when you get it off the road. But the fact is, this bike is taggable. It's rideable on the street. You can go take it to the gas station. You can go take it to go get a coffee, whatever you want to do with it. But in all reality, this motorcycle right here is made for you to start up, ride it to some trails, or trailer it to some trails if you're not too close to anything like I am here, which is the reason I haven't gotten on anything yet. It's one of the downsides, and the reason I'm kind of considering selling this bike is the fact that this is the only place I really have to rip it around. There's all the trails that are within an hour's reach of me, or 2 hours, don't accommodate for two-wheeled motorcycles. With that being said, I wanted to try something new and different in the motorcycle world. I've never owned anything like this. Most of my bikes are either vintage bikes or sport bikes, so I said, hey, let's get something a little different. I've always wanted to have a dirt bike. I use that term very loosely. Been looking to get an enduro for a little bit. I really wanted a KLX 300, but I really haven't been able to justify them, and this one came up for sale at a pretty good deal, and I knew that if I wanted to sell it, I could sell it, and I think I'm leaning towards that a little bit. Not because it's a bad bike, I just don't think I'm going to use it enough. If this bike doesn't end up selling, I probably will not be mad, and I mean, it's a great beginner bike to teach people on, and if it remains in my collection just for people who don't know how to ride, or some newer people who do come around, some friends, whatever it is, and this becomes the bike I just let everyone ride, I'm totally okay with that, because I don't think that it'll ever lose value from the point where I bought it at. But also, if I end up finding someone with some private land around here, because again, there's no trails around me, 20, 30 minutes, even an hour, 2 hours if I wanted to go that far, I don't think that any trails allow dirt bikes or any two-wheeled vehicles whatsoever, which is a shame because I would love to ride this thing on some dirt roads. And you probably won't see any more videos on this bike until I commit to driving 3-4 hours to taking it to the next state over and ripping it on some trails up there. If that ever comes around, might sell it before then, might never even take it up there. So if you guys are interested in seeing more videos on the bike, I'd love to hear what you'd like to see. This will probably be one of the last videos I make with it, other than modifying it or using it on some trails, if that ever comes. With that being said, if you have a motorcycle for sale, or perhaps you're interested in buying one of my bikes, my email is down below, and make sure to like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Man, it's cold.